Well, welcome back to the Exorbitant Mortgage Podcast. I'm here with Terry Shanahan. Dude,
John with an H.
thanks
Good
for
to be
coming
here,
on.
buddy.
John with an H. That's probably for another day.
Okay, we'll explain that one next time.
Definitely. No, so I mean, I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I mean, you're a guy. For those that don't know, Terry's been. You have a road of nutritional expertise, coaching some of the most superior athletes, in my opinion, in the world.
Sure.
To your recent endeavors of just building a rental empire.
That's right, man.
But thanks again for coming on, man.
You bet, buddy. Good to be here.
So it's just if anything, give everyone a kind of tidbit on you, and then we're gonna take this in stride. I mean, just watching it. I mean, if Shanahan Plan on Instagram,
Sure,
is your handle, right?
it is. I haven't been too active for the last year and a half, but that is.
Yeah. Well, you've been a busy man,
I've
7
been
days a week.
busy with in some other endeavors, but yeah. So, the Shanahan Plan, it kind of started off as a joke. My last name's Shanahan, and friends of mine kept saying, "I want to get on that Shanahan Plan." And it just kind of laughed, and I didn't like it at first. And then people started saying it, and it kind of just stuck. And so I was like, all right, I guess this is what we call it. But going back, to in my entire life, I've really been really fascinated by optimization. Just anything you do, doing it well. Whether that be workouts, athletic performance, or just performance in anything. It's just been fascinating to me. I've always enjoyed documentaries of high performers. I think the first thing I was really passionate about was probably like lifting weights and training, like strength and conditioning. And then in 2005, right after college for me, I had some major health issues that were really just bizarre. I mean, I looked healthy, but I was having horrible fatigue and joint pain and inflammation and just a variety of symptoms, but I didn't have like a disease. I didn't have a diagnosis. And so I saw all these doctors and, they kind of just kept referring me to the next and checking off the box. Well, you don't have this, you don't have that. But I wasn't well. I mean, I looked well, but I was really having a lot of issues. So I met this woman who was like a naturopath practitioner. I call her my crazy hippie chick friend. Now, this was 2005, pre-YouTube, pre-blog, pre-all the stuff where you can get great access to now. And I met this woman, and she's like, oh, I can help you. You just got to change your diet and heal your gut and do a couple things. And I was super skeptical because at that time, we didn't know a lot about gut health and we didn't know a lot about nutrition the way we do today. And within about 6 weeks, I was like, she changed my life. And so at that point in 2005, I became super passionate about nutrition, and I started to kind of learn about the other 23 hours outside of the gym. So things like gut health and inflammation and hormonal optimization, sleep, stress, toxicity, the other things. And I became really passionate about those things.
Because this is all stuff you dealt with personally.
Exactly. I mean, this woman was from Oregon. She was a naturopath practitioner, totally changed my life. And I was skeptical at the time. And just by my own results, I had amazing belief with how she changed my life. And so then I started learning from her and learning from other people and studying. And it was just really a passion, kind of a side passion of mine to heal myself and to get well. And then people saw what I was doing and they started asking me about it, and I started teaching people and sharing it. And then by 2009, the end of 2009, it kind of grew into a business. And Kyle Korver and I were good friends in college, and we'd work out together in the off season and train together, mainly like lifting weights and strength and conditioning workouts. And he liked working out with me because did nutty stuff, and it was just a change for him. And at that same time in 2009, fast forward, he had three surgeries in one off season, was really at a pivotal point in his career. His contract was up. He thought he was done. So he was 29. He thought he was done. He thought he was going to have to retire. And he started to see what I was doing over the previous 3 or 4 years. And I told him, hey, man, you got to change your diet. You got to change your lifestyle. You got to change, and he was living a pretty clean lifestyle and wasn't partying or drinking or being crazy or anything, but he just was eating more of a standard American diet. Mm-hmm. At that point, he thought, maybe Subway sandwich and a whey protein drink was healthy, whereas there was a whole nother level. And so I introduced it to him, and it was, hugely changing for his career. And then from then on, I started getting other athletes and worked with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, CrossFit champions, and then it kind of went, spiraled from there. was really my passion for about 11 years. And towards the end of my career in the coaching business, I started working with a lot of high performers in the business world, a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's where I met our buddy Jeff Cohn, how you and I met, and started working with him a little bit and some other guys, and here we are.
Here we are. Man, that's that's really cool. I mean, just hearing how, which I can relate because I actually went through something similar in college to where they weren't able to diagnose me at all. I mean, and still to this day, I don't even know what I have, but I know by certain foods that, I eat, your body handles it differently. And so, I mean, it's a testament to your discipline, knowing that, okay, well, I have to change for there to be different results.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that momentum with the people you worked with is awesome. So Kyle Korver, because did you say you worked with McDermott as well?
Yeah, with Doug, I got to work with Doug a little bit in his towards the end of his college career, and a little bit in the NBA. I haven't worked with him a ton, in recent years. Obviously, I've kind of shifted away from that business. But Nate Funk, Kyle Korver, Doug McDermott, 3 huge Creighton guys that I had the opportunity to work with, which was super fun. John Madsen was an NFL guy that I got to work with. You actually met him briefly in Scottsdale. He was the guy who played golf with us. And then probably about 4 or 5, 6 other NFL guys. No huge names in the NFL. CrossFit, I worked with a bunch of guys who were in the CrossFit games. Tommy Hackenbrook, who was won multiple different. Well, he won the Affiliate Cup CrossFit games many times, and then he was as an individual male, he got second and he got 9th, I think, or he got top 10 maybe 3 times. And there was 4 or 5 other CrossFit guys who probably got top 10, top 20 in the CrossFit games, different teams. I used to do a lot of seminars at CrossFit gyms. The first diet that I became there was no classification in 2005 for what I was doing, but it closely mimicked probably like a paleo type diet. And the CrossFit world was really into a paleo diet. And so I became quickly kind of a paleo expert because I'd been doing it for 5-6 years at this point. And so I did a lot of seminars for CrossFit gyms around the country, and then started working with some of their athletes. So, and then I actually lived in Salt Lake City when I was working with Kyle Korver, 2009, 2010. He played for the Utah Jazz. And in Utah, there's a ton of Olympic athletes who train there, speed skaters, skiers, winter sports athletes, and I got to meet a lot of them. There's also a ton of NFL guys that played for Urban Meyer at the University of Utah. Tom Urban Meyer is probably not a great name to bring up right now, but still a great coach and a legend. And in Utah, he coached, I don't know what years he coached, but Tommy Hackenbrook and John Madsen both played for him at the University of Utah, and they had some great years. So there's a ton of NFL guys there. There's a lot of colleges around there and a lot of great athletes that work out there in the off season. So that was really a good place for me to be at the time.
Oh, I bet. So let's go back to Kyle Korver real quick, because when you were mentioning the Subway protein diet, with all these guys, top of their game, what's the one thing that the common denominator that's helping them get to, just the mental fortitude of no, this is what I got to do? Because most people don't have the discipline,
right?
Or they can't make it happen.
Well, I think there's a lot of layers to that question. So first of all, when you look at somebody who plays in the NBA specifically, the NBA, I think of all the pro sports, the NBA has the fewest amount of guys, right? There's only 12 guys on a team. Football, there's 50-some, baseball, 30 roughly, I believe. So, the NBA is probably the elite of the elite as far as basketball players in the world, right? And they're also paid the highest. There's guys that sit on the bench that make more than NFL starting quarterbacks. Literally,
Wow.
So, first of all, most pro athletes are genetic outliers to begin with. Most. Not all, but most. Meaning they're just genetic freaks. They have God-given ability and talents and toughness and things that a lot of normal people don't have and will never have. Okay, so that's first of all. Second of all, because a lot of them are so good and so talented, a lot of times they don't start to look at nutrition or optimization or lifestyle changes until it's too late. So a lot of guys that came to me, they were in, the second half of their career, later in their career, and they always told me the same thing. Man, I wish I would have done this when I was in college, or man, I wish I would have known about this previously, because a lot of the things that I would do with them would help with recovery, it'd help with inflammation, and it'd help just optimize their performance all around. So I think, LeBron and Tom Brady are two guys that come to mind where there's been many articles on, they spend millions of dollars a year on their body. And people are like, wow, that's amazing. Well, no, I mean, it's a small percentage of their income, number one. Number two, their livelihood depends on it. And so I think it's crazy that all athletes don't do that. And I think it's crazy that most entrepreneurs don't do it. Because really, there's nothing that takes more energy in the world than to build a business and to build a team and to be an entrepreneur. I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, it's exhausting. So why would you not optimize your performance? And why would you not optimize everything you can possibly do to get the best outcome and take a fraction of your income, whatever that may be, and invest it into that, right? So as far as, the athletes, I would just say that a lot of them don't really do that until later in their career. And probably the reason they do is because they start to see that there's an end, and they start to calculate financially what one more contract means. Mm-hmm. And for some of these guys, that's 20, 40, 50, $100 million, for one more contract. When you couple the money they make plus the bonuses plus the endorsement deals, it's a big, big deal. And so when you start to look at that, you realize, Kyle Korver, he was an NBA All-Star once, and he's top 5 shooter in the history of the NBA, but he's not LeBron, he's not Jordan, he's not, the top of the top guys. And if you even look at him, 2010, he played for 17 years total, and so he basically played for 10 more years after he thought he was going to retire. So when he was 29, he'll tell you, there's different articles out, and he said in interviews, he thought he was going to retire. He thought he had to retire. 3 surgeries in one off season. He was just in a rough place. His body physically was just breaking down. So if you do the math, he made just from, not from endorsements, not from anything else, just from his contracts, I think he made probably between 60 and 70 million after that. So from 2010 to 2020, I don't know the exact numbers, but probably between 60 and 70 million he made after that. So
because of the changes he made at that time to change the trajectory.
Right. And it wasn't, I had a very, very small part to do with that, but I think I introduced nutrition to him, and he hired myself and 2 other guys that really changed things for him. He hired a body worker who helped him with recovery and types of massage therapy and physical therapy. It's totally different than anything. I couldn't even explain it to you. It's crazy. But the guy was really good at what he did, and he helped Cal recover. And then he hired a different guy. His name is Marcus Elliott, and he owns a gym in Santa Barbara, and he totally changed the way he started training. And he worked on his alignment, and he worked on his mechanics. And that was probably, the 3 of those things coupled together were exponential. But the way he started training, he definitely credits his, elongating and extending his career.
Takes a team.
Yeah, for sure.
And you got to buy into it.
For sure.
Which a lot of people are too stubborn to change, and then they play the what if game.
Right. Well, and I think, we all lie to ourselves,
And we're good at that.
Yeah, like I've never met I've never had a client hire me and say, oh, hey, it does happen, but like I would say 90% of the time people hire me and they tell me, like, I eat like shit. I eat like crap. I don't eat well. Like, I need to change. But most people tell me, oh, I eat pretty good. I just need to take it to the next level. And it's like, well, what's good? There's no definition of good. There's no mutually agreed upon definition of a good diet. And I think that's where we get into trouble, is a lot of people are lying to themselves saying, oh, I eat pretty good. I live a pretty good lifestyle. Well, what does that mean? We have no data on what you do. You lie to yourself and you think you're like 80-20, and if we really looked at the real picture, it would not be anywhere near that, right?
More ugly.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about it now, because I'm doing intermittent fasting for the most part. I'm not perfect with it, but sure. I've noticed just the way I feel has changed. But depending on who you talk to and where their information came from for so long, they're like, I mean, my wife, for example, she's like, no, like I just heard on, on Good Morning America, breakfast is the best meal of the day. And I'm like, well,
Right.
babe, I'm sorry. I love when you cook me breakfast, but can you just, transfer that to lunch or dinner?
Right. Right. Right.
And
right.
so, it's like, who do you believe? Because,
Right.
you have experts on both sides that are saying breakfast is great. Breakfast is not that good.
Right.
And then you're conflicted on who do you trust?
Right. It's a huge problem.
But, to your point, everyone has a different body, and how they take in food and process it and how it makes them feel is different for everybody. So it's not like there's one end-all be-all answer.
Exactly. Well, you first have to always ask, who am I and what is my goal? Right? So there's so much information out there to the masses, and the right information depends on who the person is. So if we're looking at,
Well, I want to feel good, Terry.
right. So like the person who wants to feel, look, perform their best, there's just overall optimization for that, right? There might be life extension, there might be hormonal optimization, but then the person who needs to lose a lot of weight, that's different. And the person who's Kyle Korver or a professional athlete or just even a serious amateur athlete, that's different
Right,
still.
the goals are different.
Right. And so you always have to look at that. And what happens is this information gets all thrown out there to the masses as a one-size-fits-all, and there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all. So when you look at intermittent fasting, there's a lot of different pieces to it, right? I mean, it's been used medically. There's medically induced fasts that are much longer than just 16 hours. The most popular thing right now that a lot of people are trying is what's called like a 16-8 intermittent fast. So meaning you would not eat for 16 hours, and then you would keep your feeding window or your food window within about 8. So roughly from 11 to 7 or 12 to 8, meaning you have lunch and you have dinner, maybe a snack in between, and then you stop eating at 8 p.m. and you don't eat again until the next day at 12. So that'd be a 16-hour fast. Now, there's a lot of benefit to that, and there's studies to show that there's benefit to that, but like a true fast is generally going to be like 2, 3, 4, 7, up to 7 days, even longer. And those types of fasts have shown to have, huge medical benefits to people. They need to be supervised, obviously, by, not everybody should just try that. But there's something called autophagy, which is like essentially programmed cell death, cleaning out of the cells. It's very anti-cancer. It's anti-inflammatory. People like you and I who maybe had some weird health issues that aren't explained, something inflammatory in nature, there's a lot of benefit there as well. However, if you just take the average person who wants to feel, look, and perform their best, there's also a lot of benefit to the 16-8 deal, okay? So there's been some studies where they've taken people and they've done this, and they've showed that like they haven't really changed what they've eaten, or they haven't really changed their caloric intake, but overall they lose weight, doing this, and some of their markers improve. So there's different benefits to it. I mean, overall, like one of the biggest things that damages us, whether it be for our mental focus or our health or blood markers, is insulin or blood sugar, okay? So if you're having blood sugar spikes and crashes, your blood sugar's too high, that's not good. We want what's called optimal insulin sensitivity, meaning that like your body has to release as little insulin as possible to stabilize your blood sugar. So you want to eat things that don't spike and crash your blood sugar. And if you do that, then there's many health benefits, including your focus, your energy, your mood, so on and so forth. Losing weight, So intermittent fasting, the 16-8, is going to have positive effects on your insulin sensitivity. It's going to have, probably most people will lower their caloric intake, just because you're only eating for 8 hours instead of throughout the entire day. So for most people, they're not going to be that hungry during that time. And so they're probably by nature going to have some caloric restriction, meaning they're going to eat less calories than they normally would. The other thing is, for people who do it properly, I generally recommend a higher fat diet during that time and a lower carb diet during that time of the eating window. And so then what you get is even better insulin sensitivity, meaning that like you become a fat burner. And so you start to optimize fat for fuel versus carbs for fuel. Now that might not be optimal for an athlete, but that is definitely optimal for a business owner or entrepreneur who just needs to, think clearly and have optimal emotional and energy, otherwise, who's not trying to play a sport. So there's tons of benefit to intermittent fasting. Now, here's the thing. If we look back at, I used to teach an online class, and I polled, looking back at this, doing some research years ago, there's literally congressional hearing notes on like the food pyramid. Where did the food pyramid? Everybody used to talk about the food pyramid when we were kids in school, like, 8 to 10 servings of grains a day and this much dairy and blah, blah, blah. And if you look back at it, that didn't come from science. It came from agriculture. So it came from people selling, so why is breakfast the most important meal of the day? Because General Mills paid for it to be the most important meal of the day, right? They want to sell you oatmeal and breakfast cereals and kids' breakfast, whatever, crap. And so that information was never science-based. It was more marketing-based to sell products, okay? So then if you take a further step back and you look at like evolutionary biology, so you just look like, okay, thousands of years ago, we were all hunters and gatherers, right? We had to go find our food. Well, generally, there's something called like the hunter-gatherer diet, the warrior diet, and that's essentially where you eat like one meal a day. So you don't eat anything all day, and then you eat like a huge dinner. And that's probably what a lot of us evolved on. Just because that's what we evolved on for thousands of years doesn't make it right. But I'm just saying genetically, we were probably meant to potentially have some type of intermittent fasting, not because we wanted it, because we didn't have food. We had to go out and hunt and gather food all day, come back, prepare it, eat it, go to bed, and do it again. That's what people's lives revolved around. Now we have access to crap 24/7, and we probably weren't meant to eat the way we do.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Man. Did you catch all that? But yeah, I mean, to your point though, everyone's starting from a different point.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love intermittent fasting. I mean, I've done it personally since maybe 2015. And I
You still do it now?
Yeah, I still do it now. I personally have tried many different diets. And again, here's the thing. Like, the other thing is that a lot of people want to argue over, what's the best diet? Is it a paleo diet, a keto diet, a Mediterranean diet, a vegetarian diet, a vegan diet, whatever, right? And I always tell people we have to look at the commonality of those diets. Like any diet that's a real food-based diet, I think has merit and people are going to have success, right? So for me, I didn't do well on a vegetarian or vegan type diet. I've tried them both, and I just didn't feel well and didn't perform well, and I didn't like it, okay? And a lot of my clients are the same way. So the thing is we have to look at like the diet they just mentioned, and everybody thinks they're so different, but they're not, because they're all like real food-based diets. So the goal is you're eating more fruits, more vegetables, more nuts and seeds, and if you incorporate, properly raised animal protein like grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, pasture-raised pork, that's great for a lot of people too.
No processed food?
Yeah, no processed food, okay. No simple sugar, and no
Jack's Pizza?
No Jack's Pizza, only on Fridays. But right. The thing is, probably one of the most damaging things is man-made seed oils. So, like when you look at cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil, all these oils that are in everything, they're man-made seed oils. They're very inflammatory. They're very damaging. And so the deal is, my point being, long story longer, is that we need to look at what we're eliminating. So any of these diets are essentially eliminating processed foods, simple sugars. Probably if you're doing that, you're probably trying to lower your alcohol intake. You're making steps in the right direction. So the standard American who's eating like crap, if they do any of those diets, they're probably going to get good results because they're moving the bar in the right direction. So, I was trying to think of an analogy. You and I play golf together. We just got back from Scottsdale a couple weeks ago playing golf, and people who don't do anything, like you got two people who are unhealthy or overweight or just eat like crap right now, and they're arguing over like, should I do this? Should I do that? It's like two guys who can't break 100 on the golf course arguing over if they should be using a Pro V1 or a Pro VX, right? It's like, dude, you can't even break 100. Like, your golf ball matters, but it doesn't matter that much. Like, let's first work on the fundamentals and get you improving before you're worried about the freaking golf ball you're using, right?
Yeah, car's in front of the horse here.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Man. Well, and that's where the optimization, which I do want to go into, because you had a life scare in 19, which, reminded you of how little time we do have, and the optimization with your health, your mental, fortitude allows you to be the best version of yourself, which you then, I'm sure, doubled down because you had a health scare.
Right.
I mean, you weren't sure if you're even going to live.
Right. Huge health scare.
So, take us through that transition now that you, and let us know what you've done here in the last 20 minutes. I mean, it's remarkable. But in a lot of what you've learned prior to that time, not that you weren't taking it serious, but I'm sure you'd agree you now have really leveled up.
Right.
Given all that you know.
Yeah. So in 2019, just to give everybody a brief background. So out of the blue, got really sick, was having horrible night sweats, fatigue, started having fever, started losing weight. Over the course of that year, basically spent over 30 days in the hospital, and I looked healthy, and doctors would come in and be like, are you the patient? And I'm like, yeah, it's me, and they were just like, oh, sorry, I was expecting somebody different, and it was just a bizarre thing. And through months and months of testing and trial and error, they found like a inflammatory pseudotumor like right outside my liver, and they thought it was cancer. So literally, I mean, here I was like 38 years old, basically like they're trying to, for months and months, it was like, oh, you do have cancer, you don't have cancer. And then I had to have 3 or 4 different biopsies where they're basically saying, okay, we think it's cancer, we're going to biopsy. You're going to have to wait for, 3 days, 2 to 3 days to first figure out what type of cancer it is, and then we're going to figure out what the treatment is. Well, you don't have to be a medical genius to know that anything liver cancer related is not good, right? And so that was a point where I was just like, literally facing death. I mean, like the thought of dying was very, very, very real. And during that time, I became super weak. I lost a ton of weight. I was really, really sick. I was having fevers of literally 101 to 104 every single day for months. Damn. Like months and months, and chills and sweats and like shaking. And I mean, I was really, really sick. So tried a bunch of different therapies, went to the Mayo Clinic, some other places, and it got worse and worse and worse. The tumor grew to 11 centimeters, and so I had to have it removed. I had 40% of my liver plus the tumor removed. It was like I think a 9-hour surgery. I was in intensive care for several days after that. The second day, I had internal bleeding, had to go back in for emergency surgery. A couple days after that, I got C. diff, which is like a bad gut infection that like older people die from. And so it was just a nightmare. I mean, it was just a really, really tough time. I would walk around anywhere from 170 to 175, got down to 134 pounds. So, I mean, it was just sticky skin and bones. I didn't eat anything for like 11 days during the surgery. Literally nothing other than like a liquid IV, no nutrient-based IV, just because of the surgery and how intense it was. So anyway, I came out of that, and then at the same time ended up going through a really rough breakup in my personal life, in a relationship that I was in. So I just, this is October, November of 2020, so almost exactly, of 19, so almost exactly 2 years ago. And so that was just at a point where I'm like, man, I think I'm doing everything right. And, I've put my health and stuff first, but it was really just a wake-up call, to, looking at death and looking at life and deciding what's important. And then right after that, COVID hits, right? And so I think right after that, my mindset shifted where, like, I want to spend more time on what's really important, which is less work, more fun, more family, finding a relationship, having kids, things like that became really a focus for me. Well, then COVID hit, and, like, things just got weird where you couldn't do much. And so I'm like, all right, I have always known that like real estate is the answer for wealth creation, whether that's how you preserve it or how you create it. And so I decided to get back in and just go, all in. And so because of COVID, I there wasn't much to do. So I started working, I started building a team. And now I have basically an acquisition team. I have an in-house property management team. And then I built a small construction business where we do construction for all of my deals, plus about 4 or 5 other investors right now. And so in the last like 20 months, I've acquired roughly, almost 100 doors, probably roughly 85 to 90 properties, almost 100 doors, all 4 units or less, single family. And we've done over 150 construction projects between my stuff and the other investors that I help manage stuff for. So wow. It's been great, man. And I think the biggest thing that changed is like I started to realize like there's an end. There's an end to this. Like our time is limited, and we all have limiting beliefs. We all have self-doubt. We all have these things, but it just was like, all right, now it's now or never. And, basically I was able to compress time in what I thought I could maybe do in 5 years, I did in 20 months. And so, I would just encourage anyone, like if you are thinking about something, like just stop thinking about it and just freaking go.
Go.
Just go. Because before that, even when I was in my other business, I was dabbling in some other stuff. I've always had multiple streams of income. I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always had other businesses I've been involved in. But after, really looking death in the face, it was like, all right, I just got to do this. I know what to do. Just go. And so
you
like,
just went deep.
I just went deep. And the thing is like, I didn't go to any mastermind groups. I didn't have a coach. I had explored it before. I learned some stuff from Jeff and Clint, who we're friends with. And there's a couple other people I know who do this throughout the country. But it was really just like, all right, let's go. Just do it. Just quit thinking about it and just do it. And that's applies to nutrition and performance as well.
To life.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yep.
Get off the sideline and go. Because even when you mess up, you then can learn from that mess up.
Right.
And hopefully get back on the right train. So, you've built a situation where, if you didn't add on any more doors, you're pretty much set for life.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what now makes you feel more alive than ever?
That's a really good question, and I've been trying to explore that because I'm hiring a coach. I have like 3 coaches, 2 for sure, maybe 3 that I'm hiring to kind of get to that next level. Because it's like, okay, but John, here's the funny thing, man. Like, me, like I bought a nice car, but like I live in a way under the radar. Like I'm almost like scared to spend money. It's almost like I need to just loosen up and have a little bit more fun. But I haven't changed much. Like, even though I've created wealth and I'm financially free, like I haven't really changed much in my life. And so I'm really trying to explore like what is motivating me to get to the next level. And I think the biggest thing I found is like I just hired my sister full time. My team is almost 30 now, almost 30 people, like all around between all the 3 businesses. Not all those people are employees, but they're either 1099 contractors or employees. And my top 3 people, my goal now is to essentially help them be free. Help them. I think Gary Keller.
Be financially free.
Yeah, be financially free and create the business and the life they want within my deal. And that's it's already happened for my construction guy. He quit his job. He's crushing it. He's happy. And I let him run his thing within our, he's like he runs our construction, and I have a deal with him. Like, it's all profit share. It's all, and he's exceeded his, probably wildest dreams, and so now for my sister and my other guy that I just hired, now it's trying to figure out what their goal is, and just help them do the same. And then going forward, there'll probably be partnerships I get involved in where maybe I just advise and invest and other people run it. I kind of foresee that being the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Helping others.
Right. Because I'm going just as hard as I was 20 months ago, and it's like once you get going, it's really hard to stop.
Can't stop.
Yeah.
It's that makes you feel alive.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And when you see others in your world win and become better versions of themselves, that's rewarding.
Totally.
It is. Like, it's different when you're doing it yourself, but then when somebody else is learning from your mistakes and not having to deal with that stuff, and now you're giving them a roadmap.
Right.
It's a different feel.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. And I always thought it was kind of cheesy when I heard people say that, because like before I just didn't
people probably think it's cheesy when I'm saying that.
Right. And the reason I started all this was for me. It was for me to be financially free and secure, but then I got that and I'm like, I don't feel any different, and I'm still just, it's just what I don't know how to stop. Like, I don't know how to just like chill out, and so I'm trying to like chill out and
being aware of it,
right,
can help a little bit too.
Take some days off and play some more golf. But Other than that, it's just keep going,
No, I'm with you. And well, that's the thing too. You can't be a leader, you can't be a coach unless you have one personally. And, at what point, everyone has, their level of like I've made it, but I don't think we ever make it.
Right.
There's always somebody that's doing more.
Right.
And you're going to be chasing the carrot forever
Right.
with that mentality. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, whatever makes you feel alive. But there are different elements to where you can still provide a lot of impact and influence without, being in the trenches yourself.
Right.
And that's what, with Exarban Mortgage, I love the fact that we're able to bring people up.
Right.
And, it does. It takes a team. And when you can facilitate in an arena, a culture of just good.
Right.
It feels good.
For sure. I mean, dude, there's nothing more rewarding than like building a team and helping people, reach their potential, get to the next level, break through limiting beliefs. I mean, that's been hugely. I forgot about my acquisition guys. I've got a guy who's my top acquisition guy who's 22 years old, lives in Canada, lives in his mom's basement, and has made more money than he ever thought. He didn't even graduate high school.
It's amazing.
Immigrant family. I mean, he's got a crazy story about, leaving Guatemala, coming to the U.S., leaving the U.S., living in Canada. Just an amazing story. I mean, he's 21, 22, he made more money than his parents, and he's still living in his mom's basement. I'm trying to get him to come here. But, the just mentoring him and helping him achieve his goals has been so fun.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
It's been great.
And we live in a world now to where it doesn't matter what, as long as you're not like a felony or, I mean, there's always a point where it's gone too far. But like the past doesn't have to define the person you are in the future.
Right.
It's like, okay,
right.
You knew John with an H 5 years ago, but that's not John with an H now.
Right.
People do change, and that's what's awesome about everyone's journey is you don't have to stay in the same place.
Right.
But that self-limiting belief is what does hold people back.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to get out of your head and go.
100%. And I would say that like before I experienced what I experienced in 2019, I studied mindset. I tried to get into the woo-woo stuff, like Dr. Joe Dispenza and a bunch of different people who taught you on mindset, whether it be money mindset or limiting beliefs or self-sabotage. I read it all, Tony Robbins, but I think there was probably subconsciously just deep down in me something that just thought like, oh, I don't deserve that, or that's not for me, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. And I think people struggle the same thing with their body, with their diet and their nutrition. That always came well for me, not easy for me, but I was always very motivated and focused there. I achieved, mastery in that area of my life. But I think I always told myself this lie, and I did well in my nutrition performance coaching business, but it was tons of travel. I wasn't able to build a real team. I wasn't able to really scale it like I'm scaling this. Mm-hmm. And I think I told myself this lie, well, I'm following my passion. I'm doing what I love. So it's okay if I don't make money, I don't make a ton of money, and so I think once I finally overcame that and, looking at 2019, like facing death, I think that just forced me to get rid of all limiting beliefs and stop thinking about stupid things that don't matter and just go all in. And that was really what changed. And now, once you get the momentum and once you get over certain hurdles, you realize I can do anything. And I think I'm more mentally tough now than I've ever been, and my belief is higher now than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I tell people this all the time, pain is a hell of a motivator, whether that be the pain of a breakup, whether that be the pain of failure, the pain of physical pain of facing death, no matter what it is, pain is a motivator. And
people that have not had that type of pain aren't able to, like you mentioned, it's almost like an aura, it feels different when you've gone through adversity.
Right.
You see it in a different lens. My oldest son would have been 5 years old right now.
Yeah.
5 years old, lost him when he was 6 weeks old. Mm. And my life's never been the same since.
Right.
And, the silver lining is you can't give up.
Right.
And how can we find the good in this? How can Johnny's life be of benefit to others?
Right.
And, could have very well called it quits.
Right. Or developed some
been
horrible
the victim.
habits, gone down the wrong path, and had every reason to, right?
Right. And you know, it's your mind that decides one way or the other.
Right.
And you know, everyone's got something.
Right.
You know, unfortunately, I'm part of one of the shittiest clubs.
Right.
But it's a club of reality.
Right.
And we all have our own reality. So it's like, step up to the plate and let's go.
Right.
You know, it's just like right now, if you're listening to this, like whatever's happening in your life right now can change.
Right.
But you got to do something about it.
Right.
And, you know, we're living in a world where people think that, you know, everything's just going to be given to them.
Yep.
And that's not the way it works. You don't get ahead from just sitting there waiting for another paycheck to come in.
Right.
Doesn't cut it.
There's so much opportunity out there right now for anyone. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what you came from. I mean, whatever. I mean, cell phone? Yeah.
A computer.
A computer. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's so much opportunity. I mean, I'll tell you, like my head construction guy who will make, you know, I don't know how much, but I mean, he could easily make 250,000, you know, this year and next year, maybe more. He escaped. He came into this country illegally at 14. His 5 families saved up enough money to give him cash. He walked through the deserts of Mexico for 7 nights, 8 days to get to the border.
7 nights.
7 nights.
8 days.
Over half the people in his group died. So he saw people die. He stepped over dead bodies. He was 14, didn't speak any English, didn't know anyone. Okay? Gets to the border, gives some guy $5,000, gets in a car, ends up in Hamburg, Iowa. Okay? Starts working. Somebody says that you're so young, you should be in school. Eventually, he just drops out of school and just starts working. Okay? Works in a greenhouse, you know, for like 16, maybe 12, no, over 16 years, because I didn't hire him until he was 32. So 18 years. He worked in a greenhouse for 18 years. Wow. Okay? Reached the height of, you know, he was doing well. He was making 60, 70 grand with some benefits and whatever, has a kid, has a wife. Mind you, since then, he did all the paperwork to be legal. He's paid attorneys. He's a legal immigrant of the United States. He and his wife, and he has kids. But if a guy can come into this country at 14, not speak a word of English, not know anyone, not know anything, and then send money back for, you know, 20 years to support the 5 families that sent him here, you know, if he
That's incredible.
And now the guy's he's gonna be a millionaire, you know, and so it's like, don't tell me that
it's not possible
because of XYZ I can't do it, right? You know, and so I'm the same way. I think there's just so many people right now who have excuses. And I don't get along well with those people who have excuses, whether it be with business or whether it be with your body or whatever. I mean, you've faced adversity. I've faced adversity. Everybody has their own battle, and some people have it way worse than we do. But the bottom line is, it's your responsibility. Take some personal responsibility and make it happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Life is too short.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't read the book, but I know Jeff talks about it, like you know, on your deathbed. You know,
5 regrets of the dying.
5 regrets of the dying.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, it's like, I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
And the only way you cannot be that guy is by doing it.
Taking all out massive action.
Taking the massive action.
You know? And the one thing I would say to entrepreneurs, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this, is that there's so many people also on the flip side of this that have come to me late in their career, usually 40 to 60-year-old males who've made a lot of money, and they've damaged their health, probably beyond repair, right? Like, no matter how that looks, if it's weight gain or heart disease or a variety of different things, right? Diabetes, et cetera. And they come to me and they basically want to buy back their health now that they have money. And so I would just encourage people, you know, you've got like the Gary V's of the world who are like, go, you know, work your butt off, blah, 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 18 hours a day. I mean, there has to be a balance, right? And so I would even tell you, like, my last 20 months has not been healthy. Like, the amount of energy and effort and 7 days a week, it's not been healthy. And so, like, I'm at a point where I got to check myself because I know, like, my health has deteriorated a bit because of that. And so I just want to tell people who are entrepreneurs, like, At the same time, work hard, work your butt off, build your team, follow your dream, but you can't buy back your health. You cannot.
That's a really good point.
You cannot buy back your health, and so you need to take some measures along the way to maintain and to do what you got to do to maintain it. And I would also say, like, I don't have kids, I don't have a wife, but I would also say, the two things that you can't buy back are your family and your health. And those are probably two of the biggest regrets I see with my high performing clients, where they built this empire and they're multimillionaires, but they lost their family or they damaged relationship with their family and they don't have their health. Mm-hmm. And those are the two things they want back at the end of the day. Kind of,
And there's no price tag on it. And you don't get that time back.
Right.
So, you almost need to, just reassess.
Right.
And maybe pivot a little bit before it's too late.
Right. And I think that's where it's so important to build your team and to have a team so you can set some boundaries for yourself and you can have a little more balance in your life.
Right. Well, it's the thing too. I mean, was recently at a conference and, they talked about how, your personal life, that's your core, and you need to build your business around your personal life.
Right.
Like, you need to have the non-negotiables and don't forget about those. What's your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? What does this provide me? Because money alone isn't going to, it can provide a level of happiness, but it's not everything.
Right.
It provides the control and opportunity to do things, to have experiences that you couldn't have otherwise.
Right.
So I guess my only point there is know your why. Make sure to build a team around you so that you can enjoy some finer things in life. Because to our point, life is too short.
It's too short, man. That's too short.
Man, Terry, any final comments or anything you wanted to?
Yeah, man. As you wrap up today, I mean, I think if I could give anybody 3 tips, who, let's just say they're doesn't matter who they are, if they're a woman who had a child and wants to lose weight, or they're an entrepreneur who's overweight and wants to get back in shape. I think in from where I come from, in my experience, if I could give somebody 3 tips, just keeping it simple, move the bar forward, move in the right direction. The first thing is diet, and I think these are sort of 3 mistakes I see. All right. So people get too obsessed with counting calories and they're not as worried about food quality. Okay. So calories means you could have a Snickers, and as long as it's 100, whatever calories, like I'm just, counting calories for the day versus, having those same calories from grass-fed beef or some vegetables, right? Mm-hmm. So people need to get way more focused on food quality, meaning eating fruits and vegetables and properly raised animal proteins and some nuts and seeds versus processed foods, even if they're the same caloric intake, okay? So the biggest thing people overlook is counting calories versus food quality. Calories do matter, but if you're bringing in shit calories, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to reach your optimal end game, right? And you're going to have other negative side effects from that. So number 1, get less focused on calories, more focused on food quality first, okay? Number 2, you got to strength train. The biggest thing that I see is people cardioing themselves to death. And unless you're an athlete that's training for a sport where you need to do that, I think cardio is probably, for the average person, again, not an athlete, but for the average person, cardio is a waste of time, okay? You need to eat right and you need to strength train, and especially women. I've seen some women have crazy transformations of their body by teaching them how to strength train, okay? So when you strength train, you're building muscle and you're going to burn calories and burn fat for 48 to 72 hours after your workout. When you do long, steady state cardio, like training for a marathon or training for something else, a lot of times that puts you in a horrible hormonal state. It raises your cortisol, raises your inflammation, it messes up your hormones, and you actually store fat. And so a lot of times, like if you look at even some professional marathon runners who are women especially, a lot of times they'll be skinny and they'll be soft around the midsection because their cortisol is super high and they're storing fat around their midsection because they're in a constant fight or flight state, which is not good, okay? The third thing is sleep is equally as important as those first 2. So easy for me with no kids to tell a guy like you who has kids, like, oh, John, you got to sleep more, But, I mean, here's the deal. If I could sell sleep, I'd be a billionaire. Like, I wish I could just sell sleep somehow where you literally took somebody and they paid you, and you just gave them like 9 hours of sleep for 2 weeks, and they felt the difference between what they're doing now, right? And it's also sleep quality. There's people who sleep but don't get into deep sleep, and they're, you know, too much caffeine or too much whatever.
What about melatonin?
Yeah, I think it's fine, you know, in the right dose, and you know, probably cycling it so you don't become dependent on it. But yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, even for people that I've worked with who are on sleep medication, I'd rather them be on sleep medication and sleep than not sleep. You know, ideally, you get your body in a proper hormonal state. You work, you know, with things naturally to get you to be able to sleep. But sleep is so important. It's so important. And just having one night of bad sleep can literally throw off your insulin sensitivity for 48 to 72 hours. So that's like the same as eating sugar. So not sleeping enough for one night is like eating crappy for 2 or 3 days. Literally, like our body essentially, that's how it treats it.
Damn. 7 hours enough?
I mean, eight's optimal. Eight's optimal. I mean, 8 to 9 truly is, and I know that's not realistic for a lot of people, but like you just got to make progress. If you're only getting 5 or 6, then yes, get to 7.
Right.
But optimal would be 8 to 9. And you don't catch up sleep. Like that's the biggest misconception. Like, oh, I'm going to catch up this weekend. Like, no, you don't catch up. Like it's gone, it's gone. You know, so again, you know,
Diet, strength training, and sleep.
Yep. Those are the three best places to start. And of course we could get really deep on any one of them, but just for the average person who wants to move the bar in the right direction, that's where you start.
Terry, you're the man.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks again for coming on.
My pleasure, man.
Until next time, everybody.
See you guys
Later.
soon. Dude, sorry we went
What time is it?
you're